Welcome back. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. You see their website right there, ourgameroom.com. They have Olhausen and Brunswick pool tables. They have Octane and Palliser home theater seating. Right now, 10% off all bar stools, and that's what these guys are sitting on. We have Games and Things bar stools that I bought long before they were ever a sponsor on this show. These were like year one. These bar stools have been a part of this set. They do a great job. Lisa and Scott Millen just have everything you could ever want for your man cave or your entertainment room. Get down to Games and Things in West Knoxville. Check it out or view them online, ourgameroom.com. Good people. Okay, we talked about defense. Let's flip this thing. Who are the impact players on Jim Chaney's offense that opposing coaches have to game plan around, have to scheme for?
Trey Smith's the best player on offense. How do you, I'm not sure how you avoid
a left guard.
Yeah, how do you avoid Trey Smith?
Yeah. Well, one of the things is it's interesting. He's the best player on the team. Okay, so you would think that there'd be something you do to counteract him. But guys like Javon Kinlaw and some of the other really good interior defensive linemen, they still went head up against Trey Smith. Now, he did well against them, but I didn't really notice them going away from Trey Smith. That would be one thing to try to occupy him and do stunts and put your pass rushers in different positions. I didn't really notice that. So I'm sure there's something there, but I think you're a little bit more limited as an offensive lineman, Josh.
Yeah, I would say if you're playing with Cade Mays at right guard, I think the answer there is that you have a collection of Trey Smith, Cade Mays with Brandon Kennedy, as much football as he's played, maybe now is one of the best centers in the league, that you have an interior that is so strong. And I think with that, in terms of the conversation, what they'll do offensively, the player that would stand out to me would be Eric Gray. His big play, home run ability, maybe the combination of putting Ty Chandler and him on the field and lining up Ty Chandler in the slot. I've at least heard his teammates in the past talk about that idea. But Eric Gray, his ability at the end of the season, I think, showed that he's the guy that you have to pay attention to if he's on the field, what they're going to try to do with him.
Yeah, and how often will he be on the field? I mean, last year he was new. I'm guessing that his pass protections weren't where they wanted them, so he didn't get as many carries. Then late in the year, he really came on strong. Does he become your number one back this year? I think a lot of fans would say yes, please. No knock on Ty Chandler, but he is such a home run type hitter that you'd like to see more of him, but I wonder how much more of him will you see. You mentioned Cade Mays. That's probably going to be another Aubrey Solomon thing where we're waiting to the last minute to figure out if the NCAA is going to give him his waiver. Everyone was excited that he had a representative who had gone up against the NCAA in these types of cases. Well, he no longer has him, as Knoxville News Sentinel reported this week, or actually reported a couple of weeks ago. That attorney who was representing him had a conflict of interest, so he's no longer representing him. So we'll see where that goes with Cade Mays. Anyone else? I mean, you'd like to be able to say it's your quarterback. That isn't the case with Guarantano. He's got a fifth year to kind of prove that he's taken a step forward. Last year, everyone knows he was up and down. And then you've got everyone's hyped up about the new guys in at receiver, but it's hard to say, oh, yeah, this guy, when you haven't seen any of them on the field yet. A lot of question marks on the offense, more question marks on offense than there are on defense, especially with Pope out.
Well, you mentioned wide receiver. I'd put in that Kevon Bennett category, I'd put Josh Palmer, because if he's productive early in the year and shown that he has taken that next step and he's ready to be a number one receiver, then I think you'll start to see that as the season goes on. Are they there yet in terms of scheming against him right now? I don't think so. But, and who knows, development of Ramel Keaton, some of those freshmen, but I'll put that Palmer as another one to watch. But it is a small number, similar to defense, in terms of those game changers that you have to scheme for.
And you mentioned Guarantano. Josh Dobbs would have kept me up. As a defensive coordinator, Josh Dobbs would have kept me up the night before the game. But that's mainly because just the type of weapons, skills he had to just take off and make something happen. And Guarantano is, not that type of skill set. So,
yeah, I don't think you add any obvious names. Palmer's one to bring up. Vince is right, but that's just because he's the number one guy. I think within the offense, I don't know that there's a freshman that stands out while they have talent. And I think in the next 2 or 3 years, we might talk about one of those freshmen, Callaway, Hyatt. They have some really good athletes. Holiday's a really good athlete. But right now, that's going to scare an opposing team. I don't think that's the case. So I think it's great Chandler and Palmer just because you know that they're going to get the ball most often, most likely. You know, like Velus Jones, you pay attention just because of his speed, but he's not going to keep defensive coordinators up at night.
Well, I mean, certainly we may have a different take on this at the end of the year.
Sure.
People could develop, but going into the season, there's just not a lot of star power on this team, offense or defense. Same story with Florida and Georgia as I put in that last category. You're behind those guys in terms of first-rung playmakers. End of the year, again, we may have a different take, but right now, going into the season, there's a reason I think most people looked at 8-4 and said you should be able to knock off the guys beneath you, which is not an easy thing.
No.
Tennessee's been a while since Tennessee could knock off all the easy guys beneath them. But in terms of getting those guys that are above you, you're still going to be the underdog against Oklahoma, Alabama, Florida, Georgia. I think that prediction is pretty straight on. It doesn't mean you can't beat one of them, but you're clearly going to be the underdog. And I think when you look at impact players, that explains why you're going to be the underdog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
You
think
just
you
don't match
have
up.
you have potential of guys to be those difference makers, but they're very young. A lot of the freshmen, maybe a sophomore to be this coming year, but they're just not there yet. So that's why I think it's a little bit more. You have to temper the expectations for this year a little bit because those difference makers are still need time to develop.
Let's talk basketball next. When people are talking about the best rosters in the SEC coming up this season, a lot of people put Tennessee up there. Kentucky's always going to be in the mix. Auburn's had great runs under Bruce Pearl. A longtime college basketball writer this week picked somebody to top the SEC that was, a little outside the box. We'll discuss that next. Come on back on the Sports Source.